Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, we're back on the Investigative Journal, live here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. How are you today? And we've got a good show planned for you. This is Greg Anthony, and you're listening to the Investigative Journal, like I said. Don't forget about that. And go to my website at greganthonysjournal.wordpress.com, and you can get shows going back well over a decade regarding what I call the Vatican-led New World Order. And with that theme, let's start out with what I want to talk about, the 10 outrageous scandals that rocked the Vatican in recent years. Now, we've talked about scandals going back thousands of years, hundreds of years, 100 years, 80 years, 70 years, 60 years. Well, let's talk about some recent ones. And there's always, this is just the tip of the iceberg. So let's start out with number 10. Gay orgy at Cardinal's apartment. Sounds like a lot of fun, huh? Did you get invited? An Italian newspaper called Il Fatto Quotidiano first reported that the Vatican police broke up a gay orgy in June 2017 involving at least one member of the Catholic Church. The apartment where the orgy was taking place belongs to the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, and that's the Office of Inquisition. What kind of inquisition were they having there? And its current occupant is alleged to be Cardinal Francesco Coco-Palmero. The cardinal has served as the president of the Pontifical Council for Legislative Texts since 2007. They have a lot of titles and different job opportunities. If you're looking for a job, the Vatican's probably hiring. And he's a personal advisor to Pope Francis. What's he advising him about? Was it about something they're talking about at the gay orgy? It should be noted that the cardinal was not among the men present at the orgy. Rather, it was one of his aides. The man who remains unidentified is a priest who works as a secretary for Coco Palmero, and was recently recommended by the cardinal for promotion to bishop. Police entered the apartment after several neighbors repeatedly complained of loud noises and many people coming and going. Inside, they found the orgy mid-swing and evidence of drug use. Well, they get drugs free, so you know what happens. How about number 9? Let's move over to Australia. Cardinal George Pell in Australia. Earlier this year, Cardinal Pell became the highest-ranking member of the Catholic Church to be charged with multiple offenses of sexual assault. 2014, Pope Francis made Pell the first prefect of the Secretariat for the Economy. What the hell are they? Are these priests, or is this a whole government? This is the Roman government in the way it's operating today, basically putting him in charge of Vatican finances. Wow. Bet he hasn't had a really good day job, never worked a day in his life. Pell has subsequently been granted leave from his position in order to defend himself in a magistrate's court in Victoria. I wonder where he went. Yeah, I remember when I was in Rome and Cardinal Marcinkus, the head of the Vatican Bank, was indicted for bank fraud and looking at possibility of accomplices and all of the workings of a murder. So he was involved in a murder case. And when they paid off the Italian government about $250 million, he was put on leave too. And guess what that meant? He got to go to Phoenix and play golf every day in a beautiful monastery in a beautiful diocese. And he lived the life of Riley until he died about, about 10 years ago? In 2013, let's see what Pell's going on here. Australian authorities have not made the charges yet. They're trying to get bribed. They're waiting for the Vatican to pay them off. They probably haven't offered enough money. They mention multiple charges of historical sexual assault coming from the multiple complainants. In 2013, the Australian government formed the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sex Abuse. The Commission called on the Cardinal to come to Australia and testify several times. However, Pell ended up giving video testimonies, citing his inability to travel for health reasons. Eventually, Victoria authorities came to Rome to question the Cardinal regarding several allegations. Oh, they'll just put him in behind the Vatican walls and forget about him. Further problems for Pell could arise from his past as Archbishop of Melbourne. During that time, he set up the Melbourne Response in 1996, a program meant to handle complaints of sexual abuse by the clergy. Yeah, they wanted to get out in front of them so they could cover them up. It has been criticized after renewed scrutiny for being like many other initiatives where the Church was more interested in protecting the abuser than helping the victim. Number 8, Catholic Church sells pornography. I thought they were in the business of selling, I thought they just sold like indulgences, or they sold masses, or, when somebody dies in your family, you go and you pay for stuff for them, so they can get them out of purgatory, or whatever the hell they created. Over 35 years ago, the Vatican bought Welt Bild, one of the largest booksellers in Germany. In 2011, the Catholic Church, the Vatican, claimed that it was shocked to find out that Welt Bild's massive list of titles included thousands of erotic books. Representatives from the Church and the booksellers said that these revelations sparked a critical dialogue, and they will be looking into stopping the distribution of possibly pornographic material. Oh, sure. When they buy a company, you know exactly what that company is all about, and they will be looking into stopping. Yes, they'll be adding to the distribution. They ascribe the mistake to a filtering system failure. Sure. Many of the books have titles such as Call Me Slut, Slut's Boarding School, Lawyer's Whorehouse, and feature erotic dust jackets. Other publishers claim the Church knew about the books for years. I guess they did, yeah. Bernhard Müller, the editor of the Catholic magazine PUR, alleged that several Catholic groups alerted the Vatican that they were publishing books with content deemed either pornographic or blasphemous. Oh, but that doesn't stop them. But as long as the protests were small in scale, the charges were ignored. This would have been going on since 1998 when Welt Bild, a smaller company at the time, merged with several other publishing houses and marketed erotic fiction. The Vatican knows what makes money. That's what they wanted to do, make money. John, what's his name? Georgian's Conviction and Murder. Geoghan. That's his name. Geoghan. John. Number 7. In 2003, remember the Boston Globe won a Pulitzer Prize for their investigation into child sex abuse in Boston by the Roman Catholic priests. The Globe uncovered evidence not only of rampant sex crimes, but also of cover-ups by the Church going back decades. And they still allow them to have their schools? I wonder why you don't hear anything about that. Isn't that strange? So you got all these kids being abused in Boston, and of course no Catholic schools ever get closed, do they? No. And nobody worries about sending their kids to a Catholic school anymore when you got 2/3 of their priests are predators. Oh, that's okay, isn't it? The priests were accused of being child molesters, were simply moved from one parish to another. Alternatively, spread the problem somewhere else. Alternatively, they were placed on leave and sent into treatment before being allowed to resume their regular duties. One of the main targets of the investigation was John Gojan, a priest accused of abusing up to 130 boys over a 30-year period. In the end, he was only given a light sentence in 2002, just for groping a 10-year-old boy. But this priest was murdered in prison a year later by another convict named Joseph Druce. Okay. When asked why he did it, Druce said that the priest was arrogant and remorseless regarding his victims, claiming that he was worth 300 of them. Druce also said that he overheard the former priest talking about moving to South America after serving his sentence to work with children again. Oh well. Druce was found guilty, although he was already serving life without parole, so it really didn't matter, did it? Criticism was directed toward prison officials for allowing the murder to happen. Experts questioned why Druce and this priest were placed in protective custody together in the first place, since the former was in jail for killing an older gay man. Did they think they wanted to set it up? Get rid of him? To add fuel to the fire, surveillance system footage was leaked to YouTube in 2007. It showed prison guards trying to enter the room while Druce was strangling the priest. Great story. Wow, you didn't know these things about your Holy Roman Catholic Church, did you? Number 6, the gay conclave and Benedict's resignation. In 2013, Pope Benedict XIII shocked the world when he announced his intention to resign, becoming the first pope to do so in 600 years. Officially, Benedict cited health reasons as his motive for retirement. He claimed that he didn't have the strength anymore necessary to endure the physical and mental demands of the papacy. Of course, this didn't stop people from speculating that there could have been ulterior motives for his resignation, or even external pressure for Benedict to step down. His announcement came while the Vatican was still hurting from the VatiLeaks scandal. Oh, we'll get that in a minute. Hundreds of confidential papers leaked by the Pope's butler. Italian newspaper La Repubblica, I used to read that one all the time, followed up on the leak with a report claiming that there are several factions within the Vatican united by common interests, including a gay conclave. These officials allegedly supported each other to increase their status and eventually to influence Vatican operations. The report also claimed they had been the victims of blackmail from people outside the church with whom they had ties of a worldly nature. Pope Benedict XVI vehemently denied these allegations as well as insinuations that there was a hidden motive behind his resignation. However, when he published his memoirs titled The Last Conversations in 2016, the Pope admitted to the existence of a gay lobby looking to influence Vatican decisions. Benedict also claimed that he had successfully disbanded the power group. Oh, of course he did. Now, number 5. Staying with one of the Vicars of Christ on earth, Ratzinger's choir. Back in 2010, allegations surfaced of child abuse in a place in, in Germany. At this point, this kind of accusation was no longer shocking or infrequent. See, folks, you're used to it now. Every day you're going to hear more and more, and that's going to become normal, However, for 3 decades, this school was run by Ratzinger, his older brother, George, brother of Pope Benedict at the time. The original accusations came from a man who attended the boarding school in the early 60s before Ratzinger took charge. However, a later independent inquiry found that the school endorsed a systematic culture of abuse, which occurred between 1945 and 2015. In that time, the report claims that close to 550 pupils, folks, were physically and sexually abused at the hands of their teachers, at the hands of these priests. But is it safe to go to these schools? Common punishments included beatings with sticks or violin bows, sometimes in front of other boys for added humiliation. Ratzinger admitted to slapping pupils in the face, but denied knowing the true extent of the punishments endured by the students. The investigation criticized the former conductor for turning a blind eye to the proceedings. Ratzinger denied having knowledge of any of the sexual abuse, a claim backed up by the report. In total, 49 individuals were found at fault, 45 of whom were responsible for physical violence, with 9 were suspected of sexual abuse. That's your Holy Roman Catholic Church. Safe place to send your kids, right? VatiLeaks 2.0. Still, this number 4. Still reeling from the VatiLeaks scandal a few years ago, the Vatican had to contend with another set of confidential revelations last year. This time they came courtesy of a woman named Francesca Ciocchi, a PR consultant named to a commission organized by the Pope to look into financial reform. Oh, that's sweet. In her book, she revealed that she had a mole inside the Vatican's Secretary of State. The two would communicate through secret messages left inside a torn cushion in the confessional at San Luigi de Francese Church in Rome. She passed on that information to two Italian journalists who wrote exposés regarding mismanagement and extravagant spending by the cardinals. They also asserted that Pope Francis is facing strong resistance within the Vatican to his plan for increased transparency and accountability regarding the Church's finances. The scandal had an intriguing twist. During her trial, when she and one other of her co-conspirators, Monsignor Angel Lucio Vallejo Balda, turned against each other. Monsignor Balda claimed that the woman seduced him and that they slept together. She not only denied the allegations, but also said that Monsignor Balda was gay and obtained Vatican accreditation for his lover to serve as his butler. Boy, what intrigue, huh? And this all goes on, and nobody ever hears about it here, right? Killing the flock, number 3. Not only do these priests get involved in sexual abuse, they, like to kill people every now and then. And when the Vatican isn't busy with complex conspiracies and cover-ups, it still has to deal with straightforward scandals, such as one of its priests killing his parishioner. Father Grecian Alabi was recently sentenced to 27 years in prison for the murder of one of her 50-year-old devout attendee of his church. I wonder why he killed her. She was last seen in May 2014 when she left her house for a walk. Right off the bat, police looked into Alabi, the priest, initially suspecting him of aiding and abetting a kidnapping or murder. However, further inquiries made it clear to authorities that the Catholic priest was in fact responsible for the woman's death. A large number of phone calls and text messages between the two led police to believe there was a relationship between the priest and his parishioner. So he killed her to shut her up, right? A search of his computer revealed Alabi had photos of nuns in sexual poses. So here we go, the nuns and the priests in sexual poses, although he claimed they were all sent voluntarily. Interesting. All right, so we're on number 2, and these get better and better, don't they? This one gets, when you get off those subjects, you hear things like charity funds used for personal renovations, too, and you go, well, who cares? Earlier this year, the Associated Press uncovered 2 private investigations conducted by the Vatican in 2014 and 15, respectively. They focused on Bambino Gesù Children's Hospital in Rome, one of the Holy See's extraterritorial properties. The first investigation initially concluded that the hospital's main priority became profits instead of proper health care. Among the allegations made by the public by AP were overcrowding, poor hygiene, leading to infectious outbreaks, improper usage and storage of disposable equipment, and bringing patients out of anesthesia too quickly to maximize operating room turnover. At the beginning of July 2017, hospital officials called the AP report a hoax. A week later, former hospital president Giuseppe Profito and ex-treasurer Massimo Spina were in Vatican court on embezzlement charges. However, they stood accused of using close to $500,000 in donations to the hospital's foundation to renovate the private apartment for Cardinal Tarcisio Bertone. So people donate money to help the poor, but they use it to build the cardinal a beautiful apartment. That's what this church is all about, folks, in a nutshell. Bertone served as Cardinal Secretary of State between 2006 and 2013, making him the second highest ranking official in Vatican during the time. His luxurious apartment is located in San Carlo Palazzo, inside Vatican City. The Cardinal denied any knowledge. Oh, sure. He didn't know they were building an apartment for him. Meanwhile, Profitti claimed that the renovation was an investment, as the apartment will be used for fundraising events. One Vatican insider claimed the tribunal was the work of Pope Francis looking to weed out corruption in the hospital. Right? Of course. Okay, we got 4 minutes and we're going to go to number 1. Vatican buys the largest gay sauna in Europe. When you think you've heard it all, there's always something else with these guys. The Catholic Church had an interesting topic to discuss during the Papal Conclave of 2013, the recent real estate deal. The Vatican spent approximately $30 million. Now, why don't they use it to help the poor? For a share in an apartment blocks at 2 Via Carducci in Rome. Several members of the church have apartments there, including the head of the Congregation of Evangelization of Peoples, Cardinal Ivan Diaz, who lives in a lavish 12-room apartment. In fact, his residence is just a floor above the Vatican's newest acquisition, the largest gay sauna in Europe, now owned by the Vatican. The establishment is called Europa Multiclub, and it's considered one of the most famous gay hotspots in Italy. Taking advantage of its newfound fame, the sauna advertised bare nights using Bruno, a hairy, overweight pastor of souls, who strips to expose body and soul before changing into a priest's outfit. The press later observed that the Vatican purchased the new property using tax breaks granted by the Berlusconi government. It is now recognized as an official part of the Holy See. Well, they're complete now. They got their biggest gay sauna right in Rome. And that tells you a little bit about what this church is all about, right? So those were the top 10 biggest scandals recently. Well, there's been more, of course. You could probably get 100 in the last 5 years. But those are in the last 4 or 5 years. And we wanted to update you since we've talked about their scandals going back to the beginning of the, going back hundreds of years. It never seems to end. But I like that last one. When you go to Rome and you go to see your priest at the Vatican, ask him about their acquisition and why they own the largest gay sauna in Europe. Quite interesting. And the priests, they all live above it. It reminds me of the, when I think this just goes on now. I mean, I remember I used to go to the St. Peter's Square all the time, and there's a little street adjacent to it, and it used to be called the Strada di Buttani, which means the street of the whores. But lately, all they do there now is sell religious artifacts, and I asked one of the cafe owners why, and they said, well, after World War II, the Vatican was getting bad press, and so they had to move all the whores to a street a long way away from the Vatican, which caused the priests a little consternation because now they had to take a cab to get serviced, and there was a gay side and a heterosexual side of the street, but they didn't want it right by the Vatican because they thought they'd get a lot of bad press. Because they were trying to change their image, after World War II. Remember all the Bing Crosby movies and all that when they started to change their image right after World War II in America? You're going to see, Bells of St. Mary's and all those movies. Well, they had to change their image in Rome as well. And that really got the priests a little mad because now they had to go miles to get serviced instead of just walking right across the street on the Strada di Buttani. All right. Well, listen, we're all done with the half hour here. We'll be back in the second half hour. First of all, if you're looking for, let me I got a commercial I got to do. I'll do it at the top of the hour. Don't miss it. We'll be back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn, the Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the Scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, that was quick. We're back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal. And that was the top 10 Vatican recent scandals. And hope you enjoyed that. And that was from the courtesy of, let me give credit to where I got that from. And that was from the courtesy of a Radu Alexander wrote that, put that together. Mr. Radu Alexander, he put that together, about 6 months ago. So it's pretty recent. So we're back to talking about the Vatican scandals. Now, in this half hour, I was thinking today, regarding some names were coming to mind, Alberto Rivera. I was thinking about some of the people that have been killed by the Vatican, and the name James Arrabito came up. And I used to listen to some of his videos, and he was quite good. And then I ran across this article regarding him and Rivera and a few other people, and it's called The Dangers of speaking out against the Jesuit-controlled Vatican and its role in shaping the Luciferian New World Order global dictatorship. Now that's a mouthful, but right on the money. And he says this, it puts my name in here, by the way. It goes, quote, "Others who have done similarly are James Arrabito," I guess he's taking this, was murdered, Visigoth and Greg Szymanski. They're talking about people who have criticized the Vatican, online alternative radio programs, Father Alberto Rivera murdered, and ex-Illuminati Leo Zagami and John Todd disappeared. I think Zagami did disappear for a while. I've spoken to him recently. But he goes on in this article to say, James Arrabito and former Jesuit Alberto Rivera speak out in the following video. And I'm not going to play that, but I will play something by Arrabito that I want you to listen to again. I haven't played it in a long time. And people that speak out against these people are few and far between, so I think it's good to listen to him again. I was thinking about him today, and I was thinking about what people have been killed by them in recent times. We go back in history a lot and talk about many people they've murdered in the past, but recently, well, there's probably a lot more than we really know about. And it isn't just those who criticize the Vatican. It's those who get in their way of their worldwide global agenda. Now, Arrabito and Rivera speak out against the Jesuits, as you know, and their Illuminati doctrine, as well as their control over the Vatican and the Roman Catholic Church. Both Arrabito and Rivera have since been murdered for their attempts in which to expose the Jesuits as the founders of the Illuminati, as well as propagators of a one-world global government based on Luciferianism. However, there is a tremendous adversity in the enlightenment which one experiences when rising above this Vatican matrix which controls global society. You now realize that virtually everything you and your loved ones have been told throughout your entire lives has been an abject lie. And because of such enlightenment, the Jesuits and their Illuminati faction now want you dead, and will use any means, including their controlled law enforcement system, in which to murder you, covertly or otherwise, as they have done with Alberto Rivera and Arrabito, since they can ill afford to have the global population being made aware of such a diabolical deception. Furthermore, if you cannot be murdered in a plausibly deniable way, their logical choice is that of black propaganda, a campaign in which to both demonize and dehumanize those whom they target for such destruction. Something typical of the extreme COINTELPRO measures taken by the Vatican-led Illuminati-controlled agencies like the FBI, when they fail to indict or murder people who they have illegally targeted for such outrageous crimes, and in desperation must now promulgate expensive covert slander campaigns in which to demonize these people. Of course, nothing the FBI or its Illuminati brethren have done is legal. However, that has never prevented them from committing such outrageous crimes. What is all the more troubling is that when common sense dictates that there is nothing legal in what the FBI is doing, yet the public blatantly disregards the FBI criminal reactions, this is illustrated of problems within society itself, which have become even greater than that of the FBI and its Orwellian operations, a situation in which the Vatican-led Illuminati have tainted far more than just the government in the United States. So, I think for the next half hour, let's listen to Arrabito and what he had to say years ago before he was murdered. I think he died in a plane crash, small plane crash or something in Alaska, if my memory serves me right. So let me pod that up and we'll get right to James Arrabito. Okay, here we go.
God has given his people a tremendous task in this world, and all need wisdom carefully to search out the mystery of iniquity. In the very time in which we live, the Lord has called his people and has given them a message to bear. He has called them to expose the wickedness of the man of sin. Testimonies to Ministers 1:18, and in Great Controversy 6:06 we read, "The sins of Babylon will be laid open, the fearful results of enforcing the observances of the church by civil authority, the inroads of spiritualism, the stealthy but rapid progress of papal power, all will be unmasked, and by these thousands who have never heard words like these before will be stirred." In the ancient world, the ancient system of pagan idolatry gave place to the monstrous cathedrals that exist in Europe today. But still on these cathedrals we see remnants of the origin of this system. Spain reached a tremendous climax during the 15th and 16th century in her colonies around the world, and we see in Spain the great power of the Catholic Church. It was in Spain that the Inquisition was set up with a tremendous power. 68 million people were destroyed there alone. The early Christians had spent many years suffering at the hands of persecution, and as the church became corrupt, they separated. We find in the history of the Waldenses by Wiley and the Waldenses by Claudiana, a book written in Rome, that the early Christians who wanted to stay pure and stay faithful to the apostolic faith removed themselves into the mountains and the remote areas of Europe, and there they raised their families. But even there the armies of Rome found them. The church was now the destroyer, and some of the most horrible scenes in the history of the world took place at that time. These people tried to have religious freedom. They worshipped in groves and trees and in caves of the earth, but even there the long arm of Rome found them. Their valleys were fairly silent just before the time of Martin Luther, but when they heard of the great Reformation that was taking place in Germany and in Switzerland, they sent representatives, and they joined the Reformation, and a tremendous movement took place against the power of Rome. And so Satan moved. In Great Controversy 2:34 we read, "At this time the order of the Jesuits was created, the most cruel, unscrupulous, and powerful of all the champions of popery, cut off from earthly ties and human interests, dead to the claims of natural affections, reason and conscious holy silence. They knew no rule, no tie, but that of their order, and no duty but to extend its power. There was no crime too great for them to commit, no deception too base for them to practice, no disguise too difficult for them to assume. Vowed to perpetual poverty and humility, it was their studied aim to secure wealth and power to be developed to the overthrow of Protestantism and the reestablishment of the papal supremacy. When appearing as members of their order, they wore a garb of sanctity, but under the blameless exterior, the most criminal and deadly purposes were often concealed. It was a fundamental principle of the order that the end justifies the means. By this code, lying, theft, perjury, assassination were not only pardonable, but commendable when they served the interests of the church." In The Power of the Jesuits by Philip Miller and this book, The Jesuit, Their Spiritual Doctrine and Practice, we get a history of the Jesuit order. We find that Inigo, the father of the order, was born in the Valley of Loyola in northern Spain. Here he was born to a wealthy family. There today is a tremendous monastery to the Jesuits and a magnificent chapel illustrating how much they honored this man and the wealth of that order. The castle next to it is where Ignatius was born. Ignatius, as a young man, was a violent, brutish sort. The police records of the day said violent, vindictive, and dangerous. He was a proud young man and involved himself in many of the sins and evils of the day. He wanted to be a great commander, but unfortunately in a battle with the French in Pamplona, he shattered his leg, and now his plans for the future as a great warrior were ended. There, while he was recuperating, he read books about the saints and about Jesus. These were fanciful books about the saints, about the miracles and the things they could do. He envisioned Christ as a great commander, and now he, as a saint, would capture the world for Jesus Christ. He had had a nervous breakdown, and this concept illustrated the condition that his mind was in. Now, as a cripple, he made his way all the way across Spain to the mountains of Montserrat. There was an ancient sanctuary there, and in that sanctuary was housed a very sacred image to the Catholic Church. This image was called the Black Virgin of Montserrat. In this church, Ignatius spent 3 days making confession and spent an entire night standing before this virgin statue as a night in a vigil. He committed himself to the baby Jesus and to Mary, and from there he determined to go to Jerusalem. And there in Jerusalem he determined that he would conquer the Muslim world for Jesus Christ. All the powers of Rome couldn't do it, and now he would do it. On his way, he found he couldn't go because Barcelona had the plague. And so he had to stay in this little town called Manresa for 10 months. There in that town, as we arrived there, we found a monstrous institution of the Jesuits built over the place where Ignatius stayed there. It was a cave. 10 months in the cave, he tortured his body and his mind until, in exhaustion, he began to have dreams and visions. He claimed that the secret doctrine of the Catholic Church was taught to him in this place. In his eye, he saw lights flashing. And he believed that Mary came in the form of a light in Jesus. And he believed that he saw Satan in a spiral of light eyes before him. He believed that he had chased Satan around like a dog with a stick, and many other fanciful concepts, but he claimed that these teachings he received there were the foundation of his entire movement. As here he began the spiritual exercises of Ignatius. These were experiences that a master Jesuit would bring novices through, would bring other people through, to give them the same kind of mind that Ignatius developed through his experience. They were brought through these experiences just like music on a sheet. For 30 days, they were told what to think, how to feel, when to groan and when to sigh, what to imagine, and they were to cut off all normal human emotion throughout those experiences. Ignatius finally made his way to Jerusalem, but there the Franciscan monks told him to go home. We don't want any political trouble here in the Muslim Empire. We've had enough of that. So making his way back to the port of Barcelona, Ignatius sat with little children learning the rudiments of Latin in order to study. From there he made his way to the little college in the town of Alcalá, north of Madrid. Here at the Colegio Mayor he began his studies in theology. While he was there, he gathered a little group of men and women around him and began to bring them through his mental exercises. They would faint and fall aside. They would scream and pass out. Friends, this is demonic activity that this man was involved in, even in his early history. Ignatius was known for the rest of his life for his mystic powers. In Occult Theocracy by Lady Queensborough and Secret Societies of All Ages by Heckathorn, we learned that at the time there was an organization called the Alumbrado, or the Illuminati, in Spain. The Inquisition determined that Ignatius had been a member of this occult intellectual society and threw him in the jail there at the Inquisition. Upon his release, he made his way to Salamanca, to the great university there, but again he was brought under suspicion of being an Illuminist, and he was thrown in the Inquisition again. Now, upon being released, he made his way to the great University of Paris in France, and there he gathered intelligent young men around him, brought them under the control of the power of his mind, and these became the basis of his society. Not too far from the university, they dedicated themselves to the new order of the Jesuits there in Montmartre. Today there's a tremendous chapel on Montmartre, one of the most magnificent chapels that we saw while we were in Europe. And it's dedicated to the destruction of democracy and liberty in the world. Ignatius from there made his way to Rome, and in time he was accepted by the Pope. The Reformation had destroyed the influence of the Church in many parts of Europe. In the book, The Ignatian Fireworks for Fiery Jesuits, published in 1667, it's right here in the vaults at PUC if you want to read it, we read the aged gentleman Paul III, who then sat in the infallible chair, foreseeing the need the papacy had of incendiaries to vex the enemies to its grandeur, easily grants the petition of Ignatius and his decemvirs, prostrate at his holiness's feet, where after sweet kisses in token of their obedience, they receive an institution of their predominant sect. From that time, Rome was the center of this new satanic system, the Jesuit order. This is the Chiesa del Gesù in Rome, and entering into it, we get some idea of the wealth and the power of the Society of Jesus. There, a death mask of Loyola was made into a picture. We get a view of what he looked like. But the altars and the artwork are the ancient Baroque style, and it's a magnificent structure showing that the wealth of the nations at one time flowed into this order. There's an allegorical statue of the church destroying Huss and Luther. Another great painting of Ignatius ascending to heaven as a saint after his death. But the most interesting of all to me was this, of Jesus holding his heart out in his hand. It was the followers of Ignatius that brought into the church the mystical teachings and the worship of Mary in the heart, and brought those mystical teachings of the Dark Ages into the 20th century. When Xavier was once requested by one of the patients to scrape out an abscess, this is Xavier, one of Ignatius's followers, he felt rather squeamish about it. He put his hand, which was covered with a purulent matter, to his mouth in order to put his self-control to the extreme test. It's amazing that even at that early time, these men had minds that controlled their emotions. Rodriguez would not at first make use of this resting place, but afterwards, in order to punish himself for his weakness, he laid himself down naked in a bed in which immediately before a man had died of pediculosis, and which still swarmed with vermin. These men, with their mind over the control of their emotions, were sent out into the world. At first, they proved themselves in the hospitals, and that's where these quotations came from in Philip Miller's book, History of the Jesuits. But they also made their way out into the world of the pagans to win them to the new pagan Christianity. One of the first was St. Francis Xavier. The Pope claimed that this man had been given the gift of tongues, and as he went out, he certainly learned scores and scores of languages in India and Asia and Japan, and became a master of that whole province in the Jesuit system. The Jesuits were given tremendous power. At first, there was only 60 of them allowed, but in time, they were given full control of the church. Yea, they were given power to excommunicate all who would hinder or do not aid the society, to confer orders, preach, and minister sacraments, to change their general, to absolve heretics as well as imprison the excommunicate, to exercise episcopal functions, to confirm, exercise, dispense, etc., to disguise themselves, to carry movable altars, give plenary indulgence, to live exempt, free from secular power, taxes, as well as jurisdiction, authority, sentence, and command of any other ordinary delegate, judge, magistrate, from any sort. Folks, it illustrates that the church and society gave the Jesuit absolute control in this world, total free from all law. In the Council of Trent, 2 of them were set aside, Alcazar and Ribera, to form a counterfeit theology to the prophecy of the Protestants about the Antichrist. At that time, these theologians formed the idea of futurism, that the Antichrist should come sometime in the future. This in time developed through John Darby and Edward Irving in Scotland into the rapture concept. And this book on the rapture was written by 2 Catholic priests. Peter Canisius and Peter Faber were the first missionaries sent in to form an educational system in Germany to counter the Reformation. The Jesuits became the educators and the controllers of the mind of children in the generations that were coming up. They became the great moral theologians and fought the Protestant concept of predestination. They taught free will, but merged with their free will was the idea that an individual through his own works could become perfect and gain merit on his own. Father Matteo Ricci illustrates the tremendous power of the Jesuit to infiltrate other religions and cultures. He became in every way a Chinese, and in time infiltrated the court of the emperor in China. These Jesuits could read and learn the language and the religion better than the people, become the teachers of the people, and then insinuate Roman Catholicism, eventually opening up these magnificent courts to the Catholic missionaries. They entered into the primitive and poor areas of the world, and thousands of pagans were gathered into the Catholic Church through these men. But they had a secret way of doing it. In the book Fire Jesuits we read, they allowed their proselyte Christians to commit idolatry by a subtle evasion, that of enjoining them to hide under their cloaks an image of Jesus Christ, to which they teach them by mental reservation to direct those public adorations which they rendered to the idol. The Jesuits infiltrated the other orders. They took over the head and the control of the Inquisition from the Dominicans. They turned it into a tremendous engine, a terrible power that wiped out thousands and millions of people. In Gurry's Doctrines of the Jesuits, we read it was Loyola himself who procured the erection of the Inquisition in Portugal. It was at the hands of the Jesuits that millions of people suffered the most horrible deaths. Terrible suffering that goes beyond our imagination today. These people did not realize that as they were persecuting these people, as they were torturing their flesh and causing every nerve in the body to scream in pain, they were causing the sufferings of Jesus Christ himself in his people. In Fox's Book of Martyrs and other books, it tells about the tremendous campaigns that raged against those who had fled into the mountains to have religious freedom. In time, all of the Albigensian race in southern France were completely genocide, exterminated from the earth. Not one was left. And the Waldenses in northern Italy were exterminated to the place where there was only a few thousand left, and they had made their way over the Alps to Geneva. The record of history has been rewritten, folks, by the Roman Catholic religion. The Jesuits became the controllers of history, and thus the record of millions of faithful souls is not available to us. The Spirit of Prophecy tells us that that record is written in heaven. The church, every time she wanted to evangelize or infiltrate another area of the world, set up schools or colleges there in Rome. This became the origin of the Pontifical Gregorian University. Its purpose is for the subversion of the world. They set up houses of the Jesuits and magnificent schools which gave some indication of the tremendous wealth of this order. Europe was being covered by the Jesuits. In the Ignatian fireworks we read, or we notice on the back page, it shows the Pope heating the fire that burned London in the 17th century. And it shows Jesuits under the control of the Pope starting fires in every country of the world. These Jesuits believed diabolical and witchcraft doctrines. At the heart of that order was occult teaching. From a Jesuit creed by John Battista Posa, he says, I believe in two gods, one is Son, Father, and Mother metaphorically according to a temporal generation. The other metaphorically Mother and Father according to a temporal generation. And what is consequent hereto, that the common term Mother, Father may be equally attributed to God and the Blessed Virgin as if they were both hermaphrodites, sexually male and female. This is raw pagan teaching in the...
Okay, we're going to have to break it off there. That was Jim Arrabito. And we'll be back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.